Hey guys, it's us.
The official
Death Do Us Part, a paranormal experience podcast. So, with that being said, if you want to follow us on Instagram, our Instagram handle is Death Do Us Part, Paranormal. Follow it, you'll see our two skulls, the one with the flower, the one with the bow. That is us. Welcome back, everybody.
We're glad you're back.
We are glad you're back. So this is our 9th episode, but who's counting? I am, clearly. But yeah, so we're glad to have you guys back this week. This week's going to be an exciting one.
Right.
It's going to be Haunted Cemeteries.
Let's
Ooh.
go! Haunted Cemeteries.
The first cemetery we're going to talk about tonight is St. Louis Cemetery number 1. This cemetery was established by Spanish royal decree on August 14th, 1789. St. Louis Cemetery number 1 remains New Orleans' oldest existing burial ground. This site is considered one of the United States' most haunted cemeteries and remains active with funeral processions still occurring today. In one square block, these hallowed grounds house over 700 tombs and over 100,000 dearly departed souls within its disoriented and cluttered alleyways. Of these countless corpses lying in the ground, the spirits of 7 deceased figures are reportedly seen around the cemetery. So we're going to take a look at some of the infamous souls that are spending their eternal rest in this graveyard. The first is Marie Laveau. And if you ever watched American Horror Story, Coven, that's what she reminds me of. But St. Louis Cemetery's most infamous ghost and grave is that of the esteemed voodoo queen of New Orleans. During her lifetime, Marie Laveau dominated in fortune telling occult and herbal remedies. In addition to sightings in the cemetery, Marie Laveau's spirit is also said to still haunt her home on Ann Street in the French Quarter of the city. Her brightly colored clothing and red and white turban are hard to miss, as she suddenly appears, then vanishes from plain sight. Reports of scratching, pinching, shoving, touching, and sudden illness, and voices have all contributed to her not-so-friendly reputation. The practice of marking her tomb with 3 X's led to severe vandalism over the years. The Archdiocese of New Orleans has since refurbished her final resting place and restricted cemetery visitors to those on registered tours or those with family residing within. The next soul that lies within this cemetery is the soul of Henry Vines. The horribly distressing tale of Henry Vines will leave a hole in anyone's heart. Henry was a nomad and sailor from the early 19th century who had no true home to speak of, but created one for himself in grand old New Orleans at a local boarding house. Henry also worried about his important paperwork, including his cemetery plot title at St. Louis Cemetery number 1. He asked the proprietor of the boarding house to keep his precious papers safe while he was at sea in case of sickness or death. The proprietor promised to look after Henry's belongings properly. Unfortunately, poor Henry, the sole person he trusted, betrayed him and sold his tomb at St. Louis Cemetery number 1 to the highest bidder.
Right away?
I guess so. Henry was never able to remedy the issue, either privately or legally, and soon fell ill and perished. With no money left to build another eternal home, his unmarked grave goes unnoticed in the pauper section of the cemetery. But his spirit still lingers. While visiting the graveyard, guests have experienced encounters with a lost, blue-eyed man wandering the site, asking where the Vines tomb is located. Poor Henry. So the next ghost that we're going to talk about that roams the cemetery is the lost ghost of Alphonse. He roams the pathways of St. Louis Cemetery number 1 in search of his final resting place. He has been known to take guests' hands and pull them to a stop and smile widely, asking them to bring him home. That's creepy. He also has a knack for gathering flowers off of freshly spruced up graves and placing them on his own forgotten tomb. Thought to have been murdered, every time someone gets near the Pineed family tomb, they are told to stay away. Did you like that?
Bruh.
Does this eerie activity reveal something about Alphon's mystery life story? Or perhaps Alphon is just one of the 100, if not thousands, of ghostly Civil War soldiers or yellow fever victims wandering the cemetery? Creepy.
At the junction of routes 59 and 136 in Easton, next to Easton Baptist Church, the nearly 400-year-old Union Cemetery is allegedly one of the most haunted spots in Connecticut. Renowned ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren and their New England Society for Psychic Research have done extensive investigation of this site, as have dozens of other paranormal investigators, gathering a substantial amount of video and photographic evidence. The Warrens have even published a book about the cemetery, called Graveyard. What's the draw? Well, the star of the show is the White Lady, who has been seen by dozens of witnesses and even captured on video, most famously by Ed Warren, and in still images. She has been described as wearing a white gown, obviously, and having long black hair. Apparently she's a bit of a prankster, as her MO is to appear in the middle of Route 59 and be hit by a car, only for the poor shaken driver to stop, check, and find no one. Visitors have also reported seeing her floating among the gravestones. The ever-popular ghost goblins and other spirit-type mist have often been captured digitally here also. Another spirit called Red Eyes, aptly named as it appears exactly as it sounds, has also alleged to have been seen here. A legend has it that the White Lady is the spirit of a woman who was murdered in the 1940s after she had killed her husband. Others think it was another woman who had been killed at the turn of the 20th century and had her body dumped in a sinkhole behind the church. Still others believe it's the body of a woman who died during childbirth and is roaming the earth searching for her lost child. Since no one has actually gotten her to sit down for a chat, her identity remains a mystery.
So it sounds like she could be a number of different people. They're not quite sure. She's just a lady walking around wearing a white gown.
Well, I'm glad they looked into it so hard.
Wait, so I'm wondering, people are thinking that they're hitting a person?
Yeah.
And there's nobody there.
Right. Exactly.
I would be traumatized for life. I have to say that.
Yeah, how could you ever live with yourself after you thought you killed someone?
But then they kind of vanished.
And then they're not there.
They're not there anymore.
You think you're losing your mind.
Wait, hold on. I this is kind of like irrelevant, but I watched Scary Movie the other day, and I know it's like the oldest movie ever, but I haven't watched it in forever, and I watched it the other day, and remember the part where they hit that guy, and they're like, I hit a boot! They're like, oh my God, we hit a boot! And the guy's like, I'm okay! And they're like, what do we do with the body? And like, the one dude has the bottle in his hand and he like throws the bottle and hits the guy in the head as the guy's walking. He's like, I'm fine. And then that like knocks the guy. I don't know why this made me think of that. Maybe they just hit a boot and it's not the lady in the white dress. Thanks for reading that, Chris.
You're welcome.
You ready for the next one, Christopher?
Yeah.
That was a long pause. So the next story is Resurrection Mary. It's the best known ghost story in the Chicago area. According to the legend, a young Polish girl between the ages of 17 and 22 was killed in a car crash in the early 1930s and buried in Resurrection Cemetery. Her death occurred on the way back from a dance at the nearby O. Henry Ballroom, now called the Willowbrook Ballroom. She is now described as a vanishing hitchhiker. Several people have reported picking her up as a hitchhiker, taking her to or from the ballroom. As the car passes Resurrection, she usually vanishes. She is described as looking like a living person, but speaking very little. She's also wearing a 1930s ball gown, and sometimes her flesh is cool to the touch. In a 1977 incident, a passerby saw a woman locked inside the fence of the cemetery after dark. Rather than stopping, he called the police, who came to let her out. When the police arrived, she was nowhere to be seen, but they discovered that 2 bars of the main gates had been bent outwards, and the bars bore the imprints of human hands. Officials quickly removed the bars, but embarrassed later reinstalled them using a blowtorch to obscure the handprints. The 2 burned areas can still be seen today.
True Crime Graveyard Edition.
So the first true crime graveyard edition story we're going to bring to you is Pakistani brothers Muhammad Arif and Farman Ali were arrested for a second time.
Not one.
In 2014 for their unique hobby of stealing and eating human corpse.
Ew.
After neighbors complained of a horrible stench coming from the residence, police found the severed head of a boy as well as other body parts stewing in a pot. Arif and Ali were originally arrested in 2011 for snatching bodies and body parts from more than 100 graves to satisfy themselves. And this is the worst part. Since Pakistan has no laws against cannibalism, the brothers only served 2 years for dehumanizing a body.
Really?
Yes, that's crazy. I think that they should change them laws, especially after this is happening.
They were fresh bodies?
I don't know. Who knows? Probably. They're probably like one of them people that like look into the obituaries in the paper and they're like, I'm gonna go get them.
Yeah, I imagine eating human is bad enough, but eating like old ass humans. Do you think that's why they really preserve bodies? Just to keep
So people can eat them?
So people won't eat them.
I don't know. I don't know if they do it over there.
Do you think
like
it was
that.
a big problem here, like with cannibalism until we started?
Well, actually, the next story took place here in the U.S., so we'll get into that. So I don't know. Maybe they'd start doing this because of Ed Gein. So if you ever saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Yeah.
this is kind of what Ed Gein was based off of. Or Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based off of Ed Gein. As far as serial killers go, Ed Gein has to be one of the creepiest. So Gein didn't kill many people, but he was known to steal bodies from the graveyard.
Why?
Well, he was building a suit of human flesh as well as decorating everything in his house with bones and skin.
Ew.
Gein started grave robbing before he eventually was arrested for the murder of a local woman. Upon searching his house on an isolated farm, police found human flesh to be the centerpiece of Gein's interior decorating. In addition to the furniture and fixtures made out of body parts, he was fashioning a suit made out of female skin that he could wear around while pretending to be his dead mother. And when doing my research on him, he had some sick, creepy fascination with his mom. It was not son-mother relationship.
That's gross.
And this is like TMI. We'll get into the Ed Gein story later, but I actually listened to a podcast about him. It was like a 2-part podcast. I had to turn it off. Like when he was grave robbing, he would chop off women's vaginas and like bring them home with him and put them on a suit and chop off like their boobs and stuff like that. He was a really fucked up dude. But I mean, it doesn't say anything about them starting to embalm bodies after this happened.
Yeah.
But we'll have to do our research on like why they started to preserve or embalm. Like I mean, grave robbing seemed like a huge thing like back a long time ago.
Do you imagine a cannibal? He's like, oh, I could go for some bacon.
Human bacon?
Yeah.
Ew.
Or like they're making spaghetti and meatballs, but
Do you think the saying "it tastes like chicken" came from, you know how everyone's like, oh, it tastes like chicken, like people eat like alligator or whatever, and
Yeah.
people eat, you know, deer or whatever, and everyone's like, it tastes like chicken. Do you think it came from the cannibal people eating people, and they're just like, it tastes just like chicken?
maybe.
Thanks for that input, Chris. All right, so this is a little bit of a crazy one. So this is about Charlie Chaplin. So 2 months after Charlie Chaplin's death in 1977, his body was stolen from a Swiss cemetery.
You're kidding.
Nope. The culprits soon contacted Chaplin's widow, Una Chaplin, if I'm saying that right, and they were seeking $600,000 to return the body.
Wow.
Well, his wife, she refused to pay the ransom because she believed that her husband would have thought that I don't know why I'm laughing at this, but the demands were outrageous. If someone stole your body, I don't care how outrageous you would have thought it was, like, I'm getting you back.
You would pay $6,000 for my dead body?
It's actually $600,000.
Wow.
But if I had it, yes, I would, because I would want you back.
Thank you.
So police started investigating the case, and 5 months later, 2 auto mechanics were arrested for the theft. They temporarily buried Chaplin's body in a cornfield while trying to collect the money, and then after that, he was eventually exhumed and returned to a safeguarded concrete tomb, so nobody could go and steal his body ever again.
Can I just say that was kind of corny? Get
the
it?
cornfield.
It's corny.
Okay, so the next one, it's a little bit... It is way more serious. It's really sad, actually. So the unsolved case made headlines for 18 years, and this is the case of Jessica Lynn Keene. She was a pretty high school cheerleader, and she was found dead in Foster Chapter Cemetery in West Jefferson, Ohio. Keene had been staying at a safe house for troubled teens, and then she ended up running away after an argument with her mom. I guess she wanted to go visit her mom while she was staying at the safe house. I'm not sure. On that night, she was kidnapped, raped, and murdered. But the police were unable to find her killer. That is until convict Marvin Lee Smith gave a DNA sample from jail for an unrelated charge that connected him to the murder. Authorities later learned that in 1991, Smith snatched Keene from a bus stop. She managed to get away from him into a nearby cemetery, but she ended up running into a fence post.
Ouch.
So hit like a dead end. Smith caught up with her and bludgeoned her with a 70-pound headstone he pulled out of the ground.
Yikes.
He was sentenced to 30 years to life in 2009.
How strong do you have to be to do something like that?
That's exactly what I'm thinking, because I know that, like, when I go to the cemetery to go visit, like, I'll, like, kind of lean on the stone, just, like, hanging out there, being with my people, and it just seems so sturdy, and they're so heavy, and they're so big, so I have no idea. But this guy, he's like a Hulk, like that guy we were looking at on Facebook yesterday.
Shout out DiCaprio.
Back in the 19th century, body snatching was a common crime among medical students. Doctors were expected to have extensive knowledge of the human bodies for surgery, right? Well, there were very few specimens back in the day, and like donating your body to science was not a thing then. So it left medical students in a bit of a predicament.
Okay.
One such snatched body belonged to politician John Scott Harrison. He was the son of President William Henry Harrison and the father to future President Benjamin Harrison. On the day of his funeral in 1878, mourners noticed that a nearby grave of a man named Augustus Devon had been emptied. One of Harrison's sons, a friend of Devon's, went searching for the body at Cincinnati medical schools. I wonder what made him... I guess they knew that that's... Well, I guess they knew that's what doctors did back then.
They're like, go get us some bodies.
Yeah, or I'm sorry, people that are in school to become a doctor.
We need bodies.
So yeah, he went to the Cincinnati medical school to go check, and instead he found his father's naked body hanging by a rope in a chute.
He's like, holy shit.
Wow.
Bro.
Devon's body, the guy, Augustus, his body was later found in a vat of brine at the University of Michigan. So I wonder if there was some sort of like thing, like maybe there was one like hub, and this guy was kind of just like selling out bodies, because this one's in Ohio, this one's in Michigan.
Shipping them across the states? Maybe.
And I was just thinking while doing this research, maybe this is why people donate their bodies now, because what happened back then. And it was like a president, you know what I mean? So maybe it was like, we need to do something about this. Science came in. They're like, we'll start doing donations. That's some crazy stuff.
It really is.
That is your True Crime Cemetery Edition. a little piece of horror. We'll go over it one last time because I feel like you guys already know what this is. A little piece of horror. We kind of dig into a horror movie. We'll give some facts. We'll talk about our favorite, scariest part. And this week, our movie is The Poltergeist. If you don't know what The Poltergeist is about, you should watch it. But it is about a young family that's visited by ghosts in their home. At first, the ghosts, they're not really doing anything too crazy. They're like moving chairs around and things like that. But then they turn out very nasty. And they start terrorizing the family. And then eventually kidnap the youngest daughter, Carol Ann. So that is a poltergeist.
And she's such a cute little girl.
She is, but there's some sort of curse.
Sad what happened to her.
She died in real life.
I know.
She had some sort of cancer or something, but yeah, she died in real life. And the older sister in the movie, she died too.
I know.
There's like a curse of the poltergeist. She was killed by her boyfriend.
Isn't that sad too?
That is. But before we get into the facts, actually, I don't know why, but this just crossed my mind. For some reason, the poltergeist reminds me of E.T. I don't know why I put them two together. Maybe because Steven Spielberg. Maybe that's why.
It has to be it.
Okay. So we're going to talk about my favorite part of the movie. And it's not really that scary, but it's a part where everyone's sleeping, like the mom, dad, the two kids, Carol Ann and her brother, I forget what his name is, but they're all sleeping in the bed and the TV's on and Carol Ann just wakes up and she goes to the TV. And as everyone knows, for the most part, if you watch the movie, that there's this demonic presence coming through the TV and communicating with the little girl. But it's just so freaky, but it's also cute, kind of.
Yeah.
Because
she has a little imaginary friend.
Well, that's not what makes it cute. But I mean, it's probably creepy to other people, though. But anyway, it starts going to static on the TV. Yeah. And Carol Ann just turns around to her parents. I guess they woke up and she turns around and she says, "They're here." And she's so cute,
she is really cute.
But it's creepy. So let's play a clip of that.
They're here.
It's creepy but cute at the same time. And you want to know a fun fact about this? So the "they're here" quote, it was actually voted in the top 100 movie quotes of all time by the American Film Institute, but it only hit number 69. Isn't that crazy? At least I would think it'd be like the top 20 or something.
I'd be happy with that position.
69. You were a terrible, terrible being. And then another interesting thing. So do you know the mirror scene when the investigator is like pulling off his own flesh? Do you remember that? And he's in the bathroom.
He's hallucinating?
I guess that's what's happening. I'm not sure if it's hallucination or like that's happening. I don't know. But Steven Spielberg actually did a cameo in that part. So the part where he's pulling off his flesh, the guy's not actually using his hands. It's supposed to be his hands, but it's actually Steven Spielberg's hands ripping off all the flesh.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then so the fears in this movie, like the clown and the tree, like that creepy tree that's outside, that was actually based on Steven Spielberg's actual fears when he was a child. So he put them in the movie.
They say you're supposed to write about what you know.
Oh. You know how they're getting an in-ground pool built in the backyard?
With all the skeletons in it.
So in that scene, it was set in the pool. Her name's Jo Beth Williams. She's the one that played the mom. She was terrified. So I feel like her acting in that movie was actually true fear coming out. Like a lot of it was real. Because there was a lot of electrical equipment and it was dangerous. Like she could have got electrocuted. So Spielberg actually ended up getting into that muddy, dirty pool with her. And he was like, all right, we're going to be fine. But if we fry, we're going to fry together. And then if you notice that there's, skulls that she's in that pool with, they're actually not props. They use real skeletons, and she did not know that at the time of the filming till afterwards. It was actually cheaper to get real skulls, believe it or not, versus props.
I don't believe
Yeah,
that.
that's true.
Unbelievable.
That's true. And this is a fun fact.
Did he get them from the body snatchers?
Possibly. Who knows? Drew Barrymore actually auditioned for the role of Carol Ann, but they thought she was a better fit for E.T. I can't think about... Yeah, but I just cannot see Drew Barrymore in that.
It would have been a totally different movie then.
I know. Yeah, it definitely would have been. I think that everyone that they had in that movie was just perfect.
Yeah.
So that's some facts for you. What's your favorite part of the movie?
I like when the portal in the closet's open and she goes in after the little girl.
Who, the medium?
The medium does. And
Do you know? Wait, sorry, I have another fact. Are you talking about the short lady?
Yeah.
With the real pleasant, squeaky voice? Yeah, the high voice. She was actually a real medium, and she auditioned 4 different times for the role, and finally they gave it to her.
That's awesome.
After auditioning 4 times. But I couldn't see anyone else playing that part either.
I think that part, when I think of that movie, that's the part I think of every time is that portal scene.
Yeah, it's scary.
Where they're throwing things through and it's falling down into the foyer.
I know, it's so scary. And like, this is a little girl, like she's stuck.
But they come out and they get her out of there. So
yeah.
It's a happy ending.
It is a happy ending. All right, guys. So that's all we have for this episode. That was a lot packed into this.
A lot of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. A lot of scary paranormal cemetery stories. And then the body snatchers. Like, what?
And doctors were paying them.
Well, doctors were... The people that were in med school were stealing. Like, I'm just baffled by that. It's crazy.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Interesting.
Anyway, guys, we hope you all enjoyed this episode. Again, thank you, everyone, for joining in this week and for listening to us from the beginning. This is our 9th episode. We're going on number 10 next week.
Let's go!
So to end this episode, we are going to hear a song. This is from our one and only Christopher right here. I love this song. He wrote this song. He plays the guitar. This was from his band for how long ago were you in this band?
10 years ago.
10 years ago, but it's still like amazing to me. But anyway, this is off of the album iPod Friendly, the band, the Mike Grove Project. Shout out Mike Grove. But yeah, so this is Suffocate. Hope you guys all enjoy it. Good night.
Good night.
I'm suffering.